Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to Saturday's edition of the dceu Daily. You know what? The Ray Fisher situation has really been hurting me mentally, been hurting my mental health. I do suffer with mental illness. I am supposed to take meds for my mental health problems. I don't take those meds mostly because they take away who I am. But considering I suffer with mental illness, I'm pretty strong mentally. But you know what? I am sick and tired of DC's face being rubbed in the dirt by different individuals. Ray Fisher. And yesterday, Ben Affleck did this big thing with the Hollywood Reporter, talking about his whole career, going on about Justice League again and how it affected his drinking problem. I sympathise with you, Ben, but if we're honest, you did have a drinking problem before Justice League, didn't you? It obviously didn't help you, and I'm sorry for what you all went through. But I'm sick and tired. And in that Ben Affleck interview, he happened to mention that for him, Kevin Feige is the best producer of all time. And it's staggering to me how people who are part of Warner Brothers, who are part of the DC universe, keep on wanting to rub DC's face in the dirt. DC's logo and everything that DC means in the dirt. You know what? I'm here to celebrate DC. I remember being a big Smallville fan in the early days of that show, wishing I could converse with other fans so we could celebrate Smallville and DC and past and present and look forward to its future. And they were good times because we could do that. Now everything's so complicated and toxic, and it's really, really affecting me. I unfollowed someone who follows me, a Snyderverse fan, and he just sent me an inbox message asking me why I'd unfollowed him. So I was very honest. Nothing personal, bro. But the Ray Fisher situation is affecting me mentally, and I need a break from it. But of course, being a YouTuber that talks about DC, I can't really have a break from it unless I stop making videos and I stop going on Twitter. Now, a DC fan, was saying he's thinking of not coming on Twitter because of the toxic situation, because of DC being rubbed in the dirt constantly. And I said to him, listen, just unfollow the ones that are making your timeline a misery and you'll have a better experience. And that's what I'm doing. Now, I'm not suggesting that this gentleman was making my timeline a misery, because I don't think he tweets that much anyway. He's got his own YouTube channel. I've been on his show before, and a long time ago. I enjoyed myself. That was the first time I went on a stream with anyone. I was really nervous, made a pig's ear of it, but it was fun. But you know what? It's just so horrible right now, because I do want to celebrate DC. I want to celebrate these characters, and I want us to, I suppose, sit in the sun together and celebrate these DC characters, and we can't do that. I do genuinely believe it's not our responsibility to, right every wrong. I thought that fighting for the Snyder Cut was the right thing to do. I thought fighting for Clayne Crawford when he was removed from Lethal Weapon was the right thing to do. And ultimately, after he left, the season after he left, that show was cancelled and justice was done, as far as I'm concerned. And maybe with this Ray Fisher situation, ultimately the plans that they've got for the DC won't work out. And maybe that DC universe would just close off forever. Wouldn't that be a shame? I don't think that would be justice. I think that would be a shame. And somehow I've got to find a way through this. And, last night, I must admit, I sat there for 10 minutes and I cried, because DC means a lot to me. You can laugh. You can laugh. We all have our windmills. We all have the things we're passionate about. And when we're passionate about things and those things are being rubbed in the dirt constantly, I don't think it was fair of Patty Jenkins to start exposing and talking about private matters with WB that she didn't like within the first Wonder Woman, and the things they wanted her to remove within Wonder Woman 84. It just incorporates toxicity within fandoms. Ray Fisher fought for an investigation I agreed with and, supported. But now, after that, and now that those figures are being dealt with, including Jeff Johns, I don't really understand why we're still here. I think this increased toxicity does go back to that New York Times article when they said that the Snyderverse is a cul-de-sac to nowhere. I think that really triggered everyone. That triggered me. No one will know what the future of the Snyderverse is until the end of 2022 with Andy Machie's Flashpoint movie. I think that's when we'll know if there's a future for the Snyderverse. And I hope the Snyderverse is part of this bigger plan of the multiverse strategy. But right now, I'm really affected by this toxicity and negativity. I hope we can get past it. It's interesting as well, as soon as I wake up, the night before I cried myself to sleep, and then we got Ray Fisher pointing out that a former anchorman who worked for Warner Media was saying that it's a toxic, horrible environment. Wait, you mean someone who used to work for Warner Media is upset because he lost his job and now he's taking them to court? Do you know how many employees of studios and networks are taking those studios and networks to court? Thousands. 1,000 a day, probably more. I'm not being exact with my numbers there. Do you know how many of those win? Hardly any. Sylvester Stallone last year took Warner Brothers to court because he felt they treated him badly. Did you ever hear about it again? No. You know why? Because it was settled out of court. This is what happens when you're a big company. So many people have, got an issue with you. So, Ray, it's not really about accountability over entertainment. This is what happens. You see, I work within the entertainment industry, not in a high-profile way, but I do work here in Cyprus, and I understand that presenting something, making something, is a very stressful environment. You've got schedules to keep, and everyone's fighting to keep the content on a high level and keep to those schedules, and tempers get frayed. It is difficult. It's very difficult to live in an entertainment industry and work in an entertainment industry where everyone's giving flowers to each other and everybody loves each other, because it's such a stressful environment. It may seem like an easy job to you, but it's not. So people fall out and people treat each other badly. Now, people now and again will come out and expose this kind of stuff. It doesn't really change, but people get to speak their truth, and I agree with that. Now, what's happening with Ray Fisher? He is rubbing DC in the dirt. I agree with him. I agree what happened on the Justice League shoot was wrong. But we are reaching this situation where it's never, ever going to end, where there's not a right, there's not a wrong. And as I said yesterday, the only people getting hurt here are the fans. But I am a low-level DC and entertainment YouTuber, so we do need to talk about the Ray Fisher situation. And yesterday, because I changed my plan for the video and I didn't want to read the article, I wanted to tell you my thoughts and feelings about it, I skipped over the article. So this is a Variety article, and let's see what the title of it is. Ray Fisher, Warner Media offered dueling accounts of Flash exit. And this is by Angelica Jackson. Now, this is a great point to make. Obviously, both parties are saying very different things. Ray Fisher has confirmed that he's been removed from the cast of Warner Brothers, The Flash, and will not reprise his role as Cyborg in the comic book film. I strongly disagree with their decision, but it's one that is unsurprising. Fisher says at the beginning of a 2-page post published Wednesday evening, despite the misconception that Cyborg's involvement in The Flash was let's say that again. Despite the misconception, Cyborg's involvement in The Flash was much larger than a cameo. Well, you know what, Ray? We've known this for a long time. We knew that your involvement was quite big, so there's really there's no misconception there. Fisher continues, and while I do mourn the lost opportunity to bring Cyborg alter ego Victor Stone back to the screen, bringing awareness to the actions of DC Films head Walter Hamada will prove to be a much more important contribution to our world. He's talking about the entertainment industry, of course. You know what? My club, Manchester United, have a young player called Marcus Rashford, and he's decided to take it upon himself to make sure that, poverty-stricken families and children are fed. In fact, this week, the government have been sending horrible food packages to these families, and he spoke to the Prime Minister. You see, Ray, they're important things to do, and this young man is he's a black young man, right? But he doesn't go around trying just to support black people. He wants to support black families, white families, brown families, Asian families. He's a total human being. This young man is an icon. That's important, Ray, not what you're doing, in my opinion. Warner Media, the parent company of Warner Brothers, disputed Fisher's claims that it had pushed him out of the role, noting that he'd previously publicly refused to work with Hamada. Last summer, Mr. Fisher was offered the opportunity to reprise his role as Cyborg in The Flash, Warner Media said in a statement. Given his statement that he will not participate in any film associated with Mr. Hamada, our production is now moving on. Now, this is very, very important to understand because we need to go through this very, very slowly. So, now you can call Warner Media liars. And I hear all the kind of rhetoric going on Twitter. But this is the truth. The truth is that Ray went onto Twitter and said he would not work on any production involving Walter Hamada. So in fact, and I will post this later, I will post his opinion later on Twitter, which will get me hate, but we'll speak about it now as well. So Ray Fisher, in fact, was not sacked. He publicly said he refuses to work on any production that Walter Hamada is involved in, basically saying it's me or him. They chose him, so they have no choice but to move on from Ray Fisher's Cyborg. He has not, in fact, been sacked. This, my friends, the reason he's not Cyborg on The Flash is because Ray Fisher doesn't want to be. Warner Media also denied that it had parted ways with Jeff Johns, the former DC head and producer who Fisher had claimed was exiting the company following its investigation into the actor's allegations of misconduct on Justice League. Warner Bros. Remains in business with Jeff Johns, who continues to produce Stargirl, Batwoman, Doom Patrol, Superman and Lois, and Titans for the studio, among other projects. The studio added. So he's in the present time, he's still there. But will his partnership with Warner Media continue, or will they not extend those contracts? That we'll have to wait and see about that. Warner Bros. Remains in business with Jeff Johns, who continues to produce. Yeah, blah, we've been there, haven't we? So let's read on. The news of Fisher's official departure from the next film in the DC Extended Universe comes as part of an ongoing back and forth between the actor and the studio after an investigation into Fisher's claims of on-set misconduct by Justice League co-writer Joss Whedon and enabling behaviour by writer-producer Jeff Johns and producer John Berg was launched in August 2020. Throughout the investigation and since, Fisher has consistently spoken out about his claims via social media. In the last post, Fisher reiterated claims of misconduct by Johns, and he accused Hamada of protecting Johns and Whedon by hampering the studio's investigation into his allegations. Hamada was not in charge of DC Films during production of Justice League. He took over as head in January 2018. This is the truth, by the way. Now, Ray's claiming that he was involved much earlier and maybe undercover. He was trying to sort out the mess before he was there officially, and that's something companies do all the time. 2 months after Justice League bombed at the box office, however, Fisher says Hamada has failed to take his claims that Whedon-led reshoots of the film were rife with mistreatment. Whedon assumed the director's chair after original filmmaker Zack Snyder departed the production due to the death of his daughter. Ann Sarnoff, chair and CEO of Warner Media Studios and Networks Group, defended Hamada. I believe in Walter Hamada and that he did not impede or interfere in the investigation, Sarnoff said in a statement. Furthermore, I have full confidence in the investigation's process and findings. Well, that doesn't surprise me that she's confident. After all, she had a proper judge there who interviewed over 80 people. So you can't get more thorough than that, can you now, Ray? Walter is a well-respected leader known by his colleagues, peers, and me as a man of great character and integrity. As I said in Walter's recent deal extension announcement, I'm excited about where he's taking DC Films and look forward to working with him and the rest of the team to build out the multiverse. So, listen. This really started kicking off last week as soon as Ray said that he would not work on any production involving Walter Hamada. Soon as that happened, Warner Media came out, extended his contract and said, basically they're saying we're standing with our man. We believe in this individual, and all the creatives who work with him believe in this individual as well. James Wan has been very complimentary about him as well. Jim Lee has been very complimentary. You know, you could say they're being forced to say, look, I don't know, but I know that James and Walter work together over at New Line Cinema as well, because I think what's very important with this article is very balanced and it's giving both sides of the story instead of just saying Ray Fisher's right, end of, or saying Warner Media's right. They're giving you all the facts, which I think is important to look back at facts. And a lot of the Snyderverse fandom ignore a lot of facts and just spew out stuff. and that can be very problematic. The investigation into Fisher's allegations wrapped up in December, with Warner's releasing a statement reading Warner Media's investigation into the Justice League movie has concluded and remedial action has been taken. On Thursday morning, Warner Media reiterated that message. As has been previously stated, an extensive investigation was conducted by an outside law firm led by a former federal judge who has assured Warner Media that there were no impediments to the investigation, the statement read. So that's interesting. According to Warner Media, that no one's impeded the investigation. And this is what you've got to understand. When an independent body is investigating this, anyone who tries to impede the investigation, would be taken to Warner Media and say, listen, either we can't work with you people anymore, we can't do this, we can't put our names on something that's being impeded, or they would say, Walter Hamada is causing a problem here. And then Warner Media would have to deal with him. Now, Ray Fisher's point of view is that he impeded it by asking for the names of the witnesses, sticking up for Jeff Johns. Now, that's an interesting thing. And obviously, Ray, rightly, was protecting those people. And I understand that. And Hamada really shouldn't have been asking for those names. So he's wrong there. But you see, Walter Hamada isn't working for himself. He's working for Warner Media. And Jeff Johns is important to Warner Media because, as I say, he's working on a lot of properties. And that's what Variety have said in this article as well. So it's very difficult for Walter because he's got them in his ear saying, we don't want to knock on that door. We don't want to deal with that. And you've got to make sure that's not a problem. So he's under pressure from everyone. But instead of this being publicly Ray saying Warner Media are wrong here, he's gone for Walter Hamada. And that's simply wrong as far as I'm concerned. And this is when I started having my doubts about Ray as a person. Fisher is not backing away from his allegations on social media. He offered to submit to a polygraph test to support my claims against Hamada. It's really funny, though, isn't it? Ray does take it to another level. I don't think we'll be putting you on a lie detector, Ray. You're taking it too far, lad. Fisher ended his statement writing, if the end of my time as Cyborg is the cost for helping to bring awareness and accountability to Warner Hamada's actions, I'll pay it gladly. Signing off with his slogan, A&E, which stands for Accountability Over Entertainment. You see, the Accountability A&E thing, he's a brand. He's now branded himself as a sheriff. So that's very interesting. Maybe he can start an independent body over at Hollywood to keep everyone honest. I'll tell you what, he's a bit of a Columbo. I do admire him about that. But I am fed up of my DC being rubbed in the dirt by everyone. It's not even Marvel fans or people at Marvel. We can't blame those people anymore. It's people who work within our own franchise. And I'm sure that Warner Media are going to work hard to drive these entities out. Now, that doesn't put the Snyderverse in a good place, by the way, because people involved in the Snyderverse, and I put Patty Jenkins in that as well, because it was Zack who brought her in, Ray Fisher, are always rubbing DC's face in the dirt. And you can't have that. So, as I say, I love the Snyderverse, but if things don't change, and look, Zack's been really, really uncharacteristically quiet about this. I'm sure he'll say something during the marketing campaign. Again, that brings negativity to Zack Snyder's Justice League. We just want to enjoy it, stand it, look forward to it under 2 months left, but we've got all this bullshit to deal with. And this is what's upsetting me. And this is what's, damaging my mental health. Though Fisher will not appear in The Flash, the actor has already completed work on the Justice League Snyder Cut, which is set for release on HBO Max in March. His role in the Snyder Cut is said to be much more substantial than the theatrical version of Justice League. And that's that. So they're the facts. Now, Ray did have a proper, fully worded article, which you can check on his Twitter and you can check on his Instagram. I'm not going to read that because my internet's bad enough and I'm going to be here uploading this all night because I have to upload these in the evening, by the way. And so, basically, after all said and done, you've got Ray Fisher, you've got Warner Media, you've got Walter Hamada, but the truth of the matter is, he got the investigation. The people were found guilty and remedial action was taken. That should have been the end of it without him pushing out Walter Hamada's name publicly from the very beginning. But I suspect that Warner Brothers didn't offer investigation freely, and he had to start talking publicly to get it. There's no question there wouldn't have been an investigation if it wasn't for Ray. So, credit to him for that. So he's got his investigation, but he's not going to move on. And all these people, Ben Affleck, Ray Fisher, Patty Jenkins, constantly coming out and embarrassing the name of DC, embarrassing the name of Warner Brothers because they don't want to deal with this internally. And that's the problem. They want us to take their side. But as I said yesterday, it is not mine and your jobs to be involved in this so emotionally, because it's draining for us, because we're not used to the atmosphere and environment these people work in. They're tougher mentally because they have to. But we just want to enjoy and stand our DC and our entertainment. And the more this shit carries on, the more hurtful it is to me and to you. Should we actually talk about DC and its films and all of that and really enjoy something instead of this negative bullshit? I think so. First of all, happy birthday to Grant Gustin, who's played our Flash for around 6 years over on the CW. Grant, you're wonderful. You're a great guy. You're a really talented actor, and I can't wait to see you in Flashpoint. Yes, we will see Grant Gustin in Flashpoint. Now, before I read this article about Zack Snyder, the Snyderverse, or from Screen Rant, we'll talk about this a bit. If DC and Warner Media were to kind of delete the Snyderverse in Flashpoint, then maybe you could have Ezra Miller's The Flash actually be killed off or kind of disintegrate from existence, and then Grant Gustin's could take over, kind of the mold of The Flash in the DC live-action universe. This is not something I want to see. I do not want to see the Snyderverse dissolved. But with everything that's happening and all the fans attacking Walter Media... Walter? I've got Walter Hamada in the brain. Maybe it will be Walter Media one day. That upset people. But with everyone going so aggressively at Warner Media, they may decide this is more trouble than it's worth. Let's just dissolve the whole fucking Snyderverse, they may think. So they've already got Grant Gustin's The Flash there, could actually do it. I don't expect this to happen, but watch your P's and Q's. I've read the Variety article. We know that Ray Fisher simply isn't Cyborg anymore from his own choice. Anyway, let's talk about DC positively. The DCEU can still adopt Snyder's darkness without a canon problem. The DCEU could avoid its controversial tone split by using an unexpected DC comic to justify the darker ambience of Zack Snyder's films. Despite many newer DCEU films having a more jovial vibe, this is an easy way to have everyone fully embrace the darker Zack Snyder side of the franchise. Zack Snyder's more serious look at the world of DC heroes with the films like Justice League has received divided reviews, partially because of the chaos surrounding the production of Justice League itself, and partially because many consider the grimmer atmosphere of these films as not reflective of the original comic material. But not all comics share the same ambience, and this is doubly true for DC, whose comics range from the likes of the cartoony and cute Little Gotham to some of the darkest comics to hit the printed page. And this is true. Even in DC, we've got a variety of tones in our comics, some dark, some light. This is what the DCEU could incorporate, what they should have incorporated all along, and the multiverse strategy can help incorporate that. Anyway, in fact, the company appears to have wanted a darker version of their main universe so bad that they spawned a hit video game and comic series, Injustice, which details a story wherein Superman loses his moral ideals when the Joker tricks him into killing his pregnant wife, which results in a war between DC's biggest names, hero and villain alike. Given Zack Snyder's movies are somewhat jarring when compared to the other DCEU installments like Birds of Prey or Shazam, it stands to reason that utilising the Injustice storyline and having his version of the world take place in an alternate universe akin to it would appease both Snyder's fans and detractors. Injustice is entirely in line with the Do You Bleed level drama that the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice raised, and would arguably allow for even more mayhem and misery should it be deemed necessary. This is the same storyline that contained a super strong Alfred Pennyworth punching out the Man of Steel after all. There's There's a little that could be off the table should the series be used as inspiration. With the DCEU, the Flash film, on the horizon, the timing would be perfect to alter the current DC movie universe without making the change feel natural by merely having it split into two worlds, a darker, more dramatic Snyder one and the one wherein the likes of Shazam and Aquaman take place. In this vein, it could even work to flesh out the DC multiverse, as the Injustice verse could be as manic as a blockbuster film budget and human decency will allow, and merely be explained as what happened in this darker version of the main universe, which could remain unscathed. This would mean surreal and iconic moments like Superman revealing Batman's secret identity via social media could still happen, and happen in dramatic and unchangeable form, while not risking the actual fate of a multi-million film franchise by taking such risks. And I think this is the thing, isn't it, with the Snyderverse? By implementing it, it was so risky and so edgy. It's great. I love it. But what they're saying here is what we've all been saying, what Snyder's been hinting about, that his universe is part of an Elseworld where he can do what he wants and it doesn't affect the central universe. Now, if Warner Media are not too pissed off with the fans, maybe this could happen during Flashpoint. You know, the Snyderverse could some of it, part of the Snyderverse, some of their characters could be trapped in the Elseworld. I think this would be a great idea. The DCEU could easily continue successfully whilst still having films with dissonant tones take place in the same universe, but using the Injustice would not only allow for some insanely entertaining storylines that would otherwise never see the light of day to be adapted, but also appease everyone, regardless of their individual perspective on the Zack Snyder DCEU films. A really good article, by the way. Shall we see who read it? Because I do like to give credit. Zoe Miss Kelly. This is a great article because she doesn't go over old ground. Oh, Zack Snyder had to leave because of a family tragedy. We're getting this. Basically, she went into it. I think it's a really well-written article and worded article. And I think this is what, fingers crossed, ultimately could happen. And I hope that it does. Hopefully, Walter Hamada is not looking at this in a personal way and looking at this as a business. This is why 70 million has been injected into allowing Zack to finish his vision of his Justice League movie, because they see money there. So giving him his own universe, his own Elseworld, is something that we've discussed a lot on this channel. And I think hopefully within the multiverse strategy, it can still happen. And this is one for you Arrowverse fans. Green Arrow and the Canaries moving to HBO Max was explored. This is interesting. This is by Rebecca Van Acker. Executives considered moving Green Arrow and the Canaries from the CW to HBO Max before deciding to cancel the proposed Arrowverse spin-off. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know who was considering this. I think the producers and people who run the Arrowverse probably went to HBO Max, and HBO Max just said no. Though Green Arrow and the Canaries won't be going to series, a move from the CW to HBO Max was explored before its cancellation. The proposed spin-off would have been a follow-up to Arrow, which ended its 8-season run in January 2020. Green Arrow and the Canaries would have focused on Oliver Queen and Felicity Smoke's daughter, Maya, Catherine McNamara, and I think that was who was really interested in her anyway as well. She's a good little actor and everything. It just didn't work. She just wasn't interesting enough. As she took up her father's mantle after his passing, Maya would have been joined by Laurel Lance, Black Siren, Katie Cassidy, and Diana Drake, Black Canary, Juliana Harkeye, in the year 2040. And they're great characters and they're a great cast and they play their characters great. The show simply wasn't strong enough, and I know people, Arrowverse fans, disagree with me about that. Green Arrow and the Canaries was introduced as a backdoor pilot episode in Arrow's final season. And that was a massive mistake and disrespectful to Stephen Amell and the rest of the Arrow cast. You know, their final season should have been focused on them, not trying to push this through. And fans and a lot of people working on the production resented that. However, despite the episode airing nearly a year ago, there was little news about the spin-off in 2020. It was expected an announcement would be made in May, but the series wasn't on the list of CW pickups for the new season. In June, Arrowverse's producer Mark Guggenheim indicated fans could expect the decision soon, but one never came to fruition. Last year, instead, it was only earlier this month that the CW decided not to move forward with Green Arrow and the Canaries. However, according to TV Line, another option was considered, though it wasn't meant to be. Executives thoroughly explored and moved to HBO Max, which is why the series was stuck in limbo for so long. And as I just said, the executives at the CW tried to explore it. HBO Max probably said no. You know, they probably looked at it and they said, no, we can't do this. We're bringing original DC content here. This just doesn't fit the tone. We're sorry. And I think this is why it didn't happen. This, a bittersweet update on Green Arrow and the Canaries. On the one hand, it's good to hear Warner Media and DC were committed enough to the show to think outside the box and exhaust every option. However, this news also removes any sliver of hope. Green Arrow and the Canaries might somehow go to series elsewhere, as the best possible alternative to the CW has already been considered. Hopefully, those behind the show find a way to give audiences some closure on my story, with many, including Guggenheim, hoping for a comic book tie-in or something similar. Well, we're all part of this multiverse now, from the Flashpoint onwards, so there's no reason Maya Smoke couldn't have a little cameo in the Flashpoint movie. There's no reason she can't cameo on other shows. Maybe she can cross over with Stargirl. Wouldn't that be awesome if that's kind of set at the same time? I haven't seen Stargirl yet, so I don't know when it's set. If it's set in modern times, then Maya Smoke could cross over. So there's always opportunities, there's always hope. It's not all dead, but a show won't be happening, and a show was never going to work. It makes sense a move to HBO Max was on the table for Green Arrow and the Canaries, even if it didn't come to pass. The streaming service already houses several DC shows thanks to DC Universe pivoting to a comic book only platform. Some of them are confirmed to be a part of the Arrowverse thanks to their appearances in the Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover. That means Green Arrow and the Canaries would have been right at home on HBO Max. Unfortunately, such a move wasn't meant to be. However, it should come as a relief to viewers. Executives tried their best to find a place for the show. As I say, CW executives would have wanted it on HBO Max, but HBO Max and those people in charge, people like Jason Kilar, would have said no straight away. Because, you know, it is a business, and they are in the business of entertainment, but they're also in the business of making money from that entertainment. And quite frankly, not enough people were interested. Now people will say, well, the ratings were quite good. The ratings were quite good. One was intrigue, and one was it was the final season of Arrow, and people didn't know if anything that was going on within that season would be covered in that episode. So it was Arrow. It was the final season, so people were going to come in. But then when you look at the responses and the reactions, and then all of a sudden on the table we had Superman and Lois. A lot of Arrowverse Superman fans deny the fact that it was between Arrow and the Canaries and Superman and Lois. Obviously, Superman and Lois had to happen. Superman should have been the first or second character to have his own show on Arrowverse. Didn't happen. It's happening now. I'm excited for the show. I think it will explore something unique and something different we haven't seen done with Superman in live action. And I can't wait to see how it all pans out. Listen to this. A copy of the first Batman solo book just sold for a record-breaking $2.2 million. Basically what Bruce Wayne would consider pocket change. So that's awesome, isn't it? That's really good. And it just shows you there is positivity out there. I mean, we're not making the money, but it just goes to show you how beloved these DC characters are. A copy of Batman 1 just shattered sales records at 2.2 million. A near mint copy... Excuse me, I'm joking. I'm joking on my own saliva. That would be justice to people who don't like me, dying exclusively on a YouTube video. Not yet. Anyway, so a near mint copy of 1940s Batman 1 just sold for 2.2 million, making it the most expensive Batman comic book ever publicly sold. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? And how can you have a near mint condition? How do they preserve it? I mean, if that was first printed in 1939 or whatever they just said, that's amazing. While it may be a little more than pocket change for the likes of Bruce Wayne, a copy of Batman 1 just sold at auction for a staggering 2.2 million, blowing past the previous sale record for the character's books. While The Dark Knight made his comic book debut in Detective Comics 27 in 1939, it wouldn't be until the following year that the character got his own dedicated title, with the first issue's cover seeing the Caped Crusader and the Boy Wonder swinging over the streets of Gotham. The 1940 book at the time had a price tag of just 10 cents, so it's safe to say that is somewhat appreciated in value in the ensuing decades. Well, 10 cents back then was actually, well, a fair price, but still a bit of money. You know, you've got to measure it with the times. But obviously, nothing like $2.2 million. So it's a great sale. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the issue had been in the hands of collector Billy T. Gates for 40 years. Gates reportedly bought the issue in 1979 for $3,000, the equivalent of about $11,000 today. Then adjusted for inflation, Gates passed in 2019, bequeathing the issue to his son. So the 2 million, whatever it is, price tag now gives this book the distinction of being the most valuable Batman comic book ever publicly sold, blowing past a previous record of 1.5 million for a copy of Detective Comics 27. The sale was facilitated by Heritage Auctions as part of its Comics and Comic Art Signature auction event, taking place through January 2017. The book is in near mint condition, having been rated at 9.4 out of 10 in quality by Certified Guarantee Company, which is generally considered the comics industry's premier appraisal organisation. During the golden age of comics, the books were cheap, abundant, printed on low-quality paper, and generally considered disposable. So to find a copy of such an iconic book in such a good condition is a very rich collector's dream. Besides being the first dedicated Batman book, the issue is also notable for introducing characters that have now become DC mainstays like Catwoman, Hugo Strange, and Joker. The Joker actually seemingly died in his first appearance, but as has been proven time and time again, death is never permanent in comics. This book now has the distinction of being one of the very few comics to have sold publicly for more than 2 million. In 2011, and I know about this, Nicolas Cage was the first person to ever publicly spend more than 2 million on a comic book for a copy of Action Comics 1. This proves, my friends, that Nicolas Cage is a massive DC fan and a massive Superman fan and deserves to play Superman in Flashpoint, and I hear that's a thing. Which saw the first appearance of Superman. Another copy of Action Comics 1 sold for over 2 million in 2018, and yet another copy actually holds the current record of the most expensive comic book ever sold, fetching a mind-boggling 3.2 million. This isn't the only vintage comic book auction to have made news in recent months. Just a few weeks ago, literal scraps of paper that had chipped off a copy of Action Comics 1 went to the block and brought in a few $100s from a collector who is obviously less concerned over the book's quality than the new owner of Batman 1. Wow. So why does Superman and Batman bring so much money? Their original copies of their comic books, Action Comics 1, Batman 1. Why do they make so much money? Because, my friends, it's in people's hearts. These characters, these DC characters are in our hearts and we love them. They may be just characters on a page to people or people in live action movies played by really good actors, but it means more than that. And when you're getting angry with Warner Media, when you're shouting and arguing with each other, hold on to that. I was on TikTok this morning and I saw that classic scene in Superman 3 when Chris opens his shirt and the Superman costume bright blue underneath. And I kind of allowed that to get into my head and drown out all the toxicity going on within the DC fan base right now, because it's truly affecting me. I appreciate every DC fan, but I just want you to understand that sometimes toxicity and fighting for this so-called morality could actually kill this live-action franchise. And personally, I don't want to see that happen. So today we've had a show here on the DCEU Daily. We spoke about the negative and the toxic, but when we actually spoke about other things going on within the universe. And I love that kind of variety and positivity. We can't ignore the toxicity, but we can never allow it to dominate our fandom and our love for these DC characters. Comment down below, like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. See you again soon.